Hi everyone, I'm Nerd Bummer.
And I'm Tactic, and we're two of the hosts of the Online Warriors podcast.
Our podcast started as a way for three best friends to keep in touch and discuss their nerdy hobbies like movies, gaming, tech, and more.
Since then, we've grown into a great community. Every Wednesday, we chat about the latest nerdy news before getting hands-on with our weekly nerdy adventures.
And don't forget our high-stakes trivia game. Come join the fun at onlinewarriorspodcast.com and every major podcast platform.
And now, back to Collateral Cinema.
I'm Bo Maddox.
I'm Ashley Chancellor.
And I'm Robert Stewart.
And this is Collateral Cinema and...
SWO World Order.
Welcome to Collateral Cinema, the only movie podcast that matters, where we focus on good movies, bad movies, and everything else in between in the world of cinema. We're podcasting straight from somewhere in South Texas, and yes, my friends, we are a 420-friendly podcast. So whatever you have, be it dabs, blunts, bongs, or joints, smoke it if you've got it. And welcome to episode 2 of season 5 of Collateral Cinema. How are you doing, y'all?
I am doing all right over here on my end, if the recording works this time.
Yeah, we've been having some technical difficulties with Robert Stewart from SWO World Order Productions. He is with us on this episode. How are you doing, man?
I am doing pretty good. How are you guys doing down there in Texas?
Very hot. Even though it's not as hot as it could be, it's still pretty warm for this time of year, but we're bearing with it. That's why if you hear any fans or air conditioning on in the background, bite us. We want to stay cool.
You know what? And it's fucking October already. It's goddamn October and it's still hot. But you know what else it is? It is spooky season.
It is definitely the spooky season. Isn't that right?
It is. I was starting to tell you guys last time. I'll tell you guys now. My wife and I have this little thing. It's called Spooky Town. It's like a Christmas Town display. We're real big dorks. We got into it a couple years ago. You buy it at Michael's. And we've been very upset this year because no Michael's are carrying any new items. So we cannot get any new houses for our Spooky Town.
Oh, no.
Oh,
I know.
So you're having to...
This is the kind of life you lead whenever you're like 40 years old and married. It's not the kind of stuff like whenever I was the age of these characters in this movie. I remember watching this movie being age appropriate and thinking like I had this hip, awesome life. And here I am at 40 years old. And I'm just like, I can't find Spooky Town. My life's a wreck.
Damn it, man. Well, I mean, are y'all just going to have to improvise or something like that?
I guess we're just going to, I mean, we have the stuff that we have. It's already out on display for the year. So we'll wait and see. But who knows if they're going to come out with any this year or not.
Yeah, definitely. You know, with the pandemic and everything, I'm sure lots of stuff is fucked up in that sense with supply lines. So, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. But anyway, we are celebrating the Halloween season by taking on another classic horror movie. Last episode, we did Necromantic. Have you ever seen that movie, Stu?
I have never. Necromantic? I've never even heard of that.
it is exactly what you think it's about.
Exactly what you think it's about, and it's very, very romantic about it as well. So,
fantastic! I will look that up.
Yeah, look it up. It's listed amongst like those lists of most disturbing movies. You'll find it a lot on those type of videos and whatnot. So yeah, it's one of those movies, and it has a sequel.
Of course, don't they all?
Yeah, don't they all?
Hard to find horror movies that don't.
Yeah, right? Like, for instance, the movie that we are talking about today. We are talking about Wes Craven's all-time classic satirical slasher movie, Scream. Man,
yeah.
We just watched this movie like not even a few minutes ago, right, Ash?
Yeah, you and I did. That was it's still fresh on the brain, and the first thing that's coming to mind about this movie is just how meta it is. Just countless references to horror films, including Wes Craven's own Nightmare on Elm Street. That's mentioned more than once.
I love that so much.
And directly referenced. And I love that even that little joke he makes. The first one was scary, but, you know, the rest were trash.
Yeah, right. And it's a little self-effacing there because he did direct one of those sequels.
At least Dream Warriors, right?
Yeah, I believe so. In case anybody...
Dream Warriors is fantastic.
Dream Warriors is great, man. That is my favorite of the Nightmare series. We actually did a retrospective on the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise on the director's cut, and we went into Dream Warriors quite a bit, and that is really like just the best one. It feels like the Avengers meets Nightmare on Elm Street, right?
Definitely.
But anyway, this movie was directed by the one and only Wes Craven. So, I mean, speaking of Nightmare on Elm Street. And this has his fingerprints all over it. Just basically in the way that the characters are presented, even though it's all satirical, but also just in the way that the horror is actually displayed on screen. You know, like the on-screen violence itself, it's both a metaphor and it's also exactly what the movie is going for, if you know what I mean.
It is, and like a lot of his movies, it's bloody and brutal, but not gory. Like, it's not anything that you can't watch. It's nothing that you're gonna like pull your eyes away from because it's gross or overly graphic or anything, but there is a lot of blood.
There aren't even titties.
Oh, come on now.
How are you going to give us a horror slasher film in the same vein as the 80s,
Well,
in the 90s, without fucking titties?
Well, technically, that was never really Wes Craven's forte. I mean, even going all the way back to Last House on the Left, which is his contribution to extreme cinema, I mean, you had very little of that, and that actually had like a sexual assault scene in it. So, I mean, he really went there, but he didn't really go there a lot.
Yeah, and he actually satirized that in this one.
Yeah, very much so.
There's a whole joke on it, and like they go for a whole bit doing it. I mean, this movie is in many ways a parody of, you know, the slasher horror films of the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
It kind of predates, you know, Scary Movie in that sense, right?
Of course it does. Come on. Scary Movie is a parody of Scream. It's funny. It's a parody of a parody, right?
Yeah, how far out do you need to go on that one? Like, where do we get the parody of Scary Movie at?
To tell the truth, I was just thinking about Scary Movie the entire time I was watching it earlier. Like, I mean, I'm just looking at this movie, and it's like amazing how Scary Movie just really follows this story beat by beat almost.
I've never seen Scary Movie. I've heard that. I've heard it's pretty much like it's just Scream, except zanier and sillier, but I've never seen the original Scary Movie.
You need to see it. It's actually worth watching at least once because it works on so many levels. It works on, you know, if you're just a fan of those types of movies, you know, like Naked Gun, Airplane, and whatnot.
Right.
But it also works on the level of if you're into the movie Scream because, like I said, it really kind of follows that story beat by beat, like almost to a T. And that's really what makes the parody in that movie so much more cutting. Ash, you haven't seen Scary Movie, have you?
No, I haven't.
Oh, damn it, man.
I've seen bits and pieces of some of them, but I don't think I've ever seen any of the first one.
It's pretty much the last great parody movie. Like, I mean...
I saw Epic Movie, and that was terrible.
No, I'll take it back. Not Another Teen Movie is the last great parody movie, in my opinion.
I've heard Not Another Teen Movie is good. I saw Meet the Spartans in theaters, and that was terrible.
Oh, I never really messed around with Meet the Spartans. I mean, Epic Movie and Date Movie, I sat through, like, not even laughing once. Like,
yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
Not even once, especially Date Movie. That was a joyless experience.
They got away from just lampooning the genre into just making references that, like, by the time the movie came out in theater, the reference was already old.
Yeah, it's pretty much just the Family Guy approach to comedy. You know, the manatee jokes.
Yeah. Like, I watched all 3 Naked Guns, and the first 2 hold up really well, and the third one is just a bunch of, like, oh, look, it's the early 90s jokes. Like, let's talk about the LA riots. And it's like, okay, yeah, we get it. It's not funny 20-some years later. This movie was not meant to age.
Yeah, seriously. It does kind of suffer from that. And this movie, especially Scream, it's amazing that there's certain elements that are dated, but not enough to make the movie as a whole feel dated.
I think watching Scream, the only thing that really feels super dated at this point is there's a part where Billy drops his cell phone, and it's a big reveal, like, oh, this character owns a cell phone.
Yeah, that didn't work.
Can you believe how unrealistic that is?
Exactly.
Yeah, that part actually was, it's funny because, I was born in 95, so I don't really remember a time without cell phones.
I know, right?
I mean, just barely.
I remember back in the days when a cell phone was literally this thing in this big handbag it was like a car phone. You had to pick it up and dial and everything. It had the cord and whatnot. Like, that's what my mom had, at least, back in the day.
Yeah. I remember my mom having one, and it was like we had to go to Walmart and buy the card for the minutes. Like, you didn't just have a plan or anything. You sure as hell weren't texting or anything like that.
No, texting wasn't even a thing until Nokia came around. And, those phones, of course, will be found, like, centuries later intact. You'll still be able to play the Snake on it.
They kind of, I think the most recent Scream movie they did was a more modern take that I haven't seen it, but
yeah, you're talking about Scream 4?
Scream 4 was like 2011, so
yeah, well, now they're about to have an actual reboot, which is kind of why we went ahead and brought this movie to the forefront.
Yeah, 10 years after the last one, the only one that won't be directed by Wes Craven, unfortunately.
Yeah, Wes Craven passed away, I want to say maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It doesn't feel like it's been that long, but
it doesn't feel like it has, but I bet it has been at least that long. Yeah,
and he's just so missed. It would have been great to see what he would have done if he would have directed, like, say, another Nightmare with Robert Englund.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, that would have been amazing.
Oh god, too bad.
And Robert Englund says that he has another Nightmare left in him. He has another movie left in him.
Bring him back for one more and just finish it off strong.
Yeah. Hell, even just making another new Nightmare type of scenario, bring Lagenkamp back as well.
Yeah, I'd be here for all that, definitely.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen New Nightmare, I highly recommend watching that. If you don't even really have to be a Nightmare on Elm Street fan to really get into that. You just
for New Nightmare, as long as you've seen the first one, that's all you need. You don't need anything else.
Plus, I like to make a direct connection between New Nightmare and Scream because New Nightmare is where Wes Craven really kind of explored the whole meta-narrative angle that really comes into play here during Scream.
Yeah, because by this time, there's already been countless horror slasher flicks and they've become a part of pop culture. It's so much so that earlier I was going to point this out that even though I'm a 90s baby, I understood most of the references that were thrown out.
Yeah, even just by cultural osmosis, like for instance in the very first scene, which we're going to get into some scene breakdowns here because I think there's some very important scenes that need to really be explored here. But knowledge of horror movies is pretty much central to the actual, plot of the movie. And, especially knowing like something that's really, really basic horror movie knowledge, but it's kind of believable even around then that, so-called normies wouldn't even know what it was. And that's, of course, who was the killer in Friday the 13th. and that skips Drew Barrymore up hardcore. That costs her boyfriend his life. And like I said, it's such an easy thing to miss or even just for casual horror fans.
Yeah, and I knew where he was going with it too.
Yeah, exactly.
Whenever he asked, and she was like Jason, I was like, oh, yeah, you're right, it's not Jason.
No,
you
missed.
If you even just know a little bit about horror movie history, you'll know who that actually was in Friday the 13th. Yeah, Jason's mom. Spoiler alert, kids, for a movie that's,
41-year-old
movie that everybody has seen and most people don't even really care for, apparently.
It's all right. I have recently rewatched all the Friday the 13th. The original one is mid-tier. Like, it's not one of the bad ones. It's not one of the great ones. It's fine.
I will die on the hill that Jason Takes Manhattan is the absolute masterpiece of the series. It's the greatest thing ever. Like, I don't even care if Jason is in Manhattan for only 15 minutes. It is amazing. They could have just made it, Jason on a ship the entire time and not even had New York or Manhattan have any role in it. And it would have been just fine.
It's interesting because in all the other Jason movies, although he always gets his victims, there's always the sense that, like, just run the fuck away from him. Just go. Just run as fast as you can. But you're trapped on a boat with him. That's very claustrophobic.
Yeah, and it should have been explored even further than it was. I mean, it was explored to the nth degree, and it made for some fascinating kills. And honestly, I think that's what makes that one the most memorable. I mean, all the kills are like just, being hoisted by your own foibles, or hoisted by your own petard, I should say.
Or you try to box Jason, and that goes about as well as you would expect.
Yeah, exactly. But I really like the concept of the killer. He's very taunting. He almost has like a seductiveness to him, right?
Yeah, he does. I mean, even early on when he's on the phone with Drew Barrymore, at first, she's kind of throwing him off, but then she does sort of flirt with him for a little bit because he comes off, and that's the psychopath in him, right?
Yeah. It's kind of like a cat playing with a ball of yarn or with an insect before it pounces on it and just eats it.
and even in just that first scene, it's so meta. At the same time, though, I'm watching this and I'm thinking, this is directed and written quite a bit better than a lot of the 80s slasher movies. There really is an emotional...
like a set piece behind it.
It's very emotional, is I guess what I'm trying to say is...
Well, yeah, I mean, the overall themes of the movie are trauma and how to deal with trauma, and that's something that kind of flows throughout the other movies. It's pretty much like Sydney in various degrees of, dealing with her loss and dealing with her trauma. And, every time it looks like she's about to take, another couple of steps forward, her trauma comes back and brings her several steps backward. It's just indicative of her overall struggle with what happened to her mom and what happened afterwards with, spoiler alert, with her boyfriend and with, Matthew Lillard's character, which we're going to get into here in a while.
Oh, yeah, we have to get into him.
Oh, yeah, we're going to get into the characters anymore. I just wanted to explore the actual killer and everything, but...
Like Zoinks, I like to kill people.
But, I mean, what did you think of the concept of the killer, Stu?
It's interesting. It's funny if you watch, and we had talked a little bit about Friday the 13th. If you watch the second Friday the 13th, the first one with, Jason, as it were, he is not hyper competent at all. Like, you picture Jason in your head as this big, unstoppable, just can't do anything about him. He's going to get you. He's going to wipe you out. But you watch the second Friday the 13th, and he's barely competent. Like, he falls off a chair. He cowers whenever Ginny, the protagonist, breaks out a chainsaw. And you really have a true to form killer here, where whether the killer at any given time is Billy or Stu, they're not that good at what they do. They mostly get lucky most of the time. But I mean, how many times in this movie do you see them get knocked over, punched in the face, kicked in the balls, and you just hear them like grunt and fall over, and then their victim just does something horror movie stupid that still ends up getting them killed?
Yeah,
I mean, they're threatening because they have that terrible voice on the phone, and they do successfully kill people. But you could also watch it and think like, dude, I could kill these guys.
Yeah, seriously, they're pretty much just straight up edgelords. That's exactly what they are. They're the prototypical little edgelords that you would see on
4chan edgelords.
You would see on 4chan, I mean, or on other little horror forums in some little seedy underbelly of the internet. These are exactly. And I was that idiot maybe a little bit when I was a kid. I was the idiot that went on Rotten.com and just fucking looked at all the gross stuff and everything. I'm a little beyond that, although I have lots of extreme horror movies, so I guess that kind of fills that now. But yeah, I mean, I kind of understand where they were coming from there a little bit. And, it's really, really translated well in this movie, especially script-wise and character-wise as well.
And in terms of movies that are so intelligent in the way that they're written, that are meta critiques on the horror genre, I really would compare this to, like, say, Cabin in the Woods in terms of how far they take, right?
I would say rewatching Scream now all these years later, 100% I thought that while I was watching it was one of the biggest problems that has come about with this movie is I just think Cabin in the Woods came out years later and did it better.
Yeah.
Like, I like Cabin in the Woods more than this as a meta commentary on horror. I mean, they're both great, and without Scream, you might not have Cabin in the Woods, but I mean, boy, they're both great. They're both fantastic movies. Like just way up there in movies that I like all time.
Yeah, that's very much true and everything. But honestly, what I kind of think about whenever I watch Scream, and I know that it's a weird connection to make, I kind of think of Mikhail Haneke's Funny Games. That's another movie that was very meta and very satirical about, what it was trying to say, mainly about how audiences partake in movie violence.
Right, yeah.
Which I think that there's a little bit of a commentary like that going on here with Scream as well. There's a little bit of that, yeah, that's right, here's all the blood and guts. This is what you want, right?
I think they do that with we had alluded to it earlier with the scene where, they're watching Halloween and you see the scene in the bedroom and I think it's Jamie Kennedy's character says like, oh, here's the boob scene. And then it cuts to Nev Campbell and Skeet Ulrich up in the bedroom and you don't actually see it. So the movie's like, we know what you're expecting, but no.
Yeah, they keep on, putting it forward and then bringing it back and putting it forward and bringing it back. It's kind of toying with the audience in a way.
God damn it! I want my horror movie titties.
Oh, we'll go. I got plenty of movies for that, dude.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding.
Lots of movies for that, actually.
Yeah, and I have Pornhub for that too. So.
Oh my lord.
All right. Well, yeah, Scream, I think, is just, I kind of agree with you. I think Cabin in the Woods just takes it to its logical extreme. But, Scream, I think, really just started the snowball with that, sort of. And I think we kind of needed something to take before. I haven't seen the other films, but don't they go on another level and, like, Scream exists as a film within the universe or something like that?
Yeah, in the second movie...
Yeah, it becomes a movie called Stab.
Stab, exactly. Yeah, it becomes a movie called Stab and is based on the book by Gale Weathers. If memory serves me right, I believe that's what the whole story was.
I mean, that's kind of the perfect way to take it from there, so I respect that. But I would like to see maybe in the next one actually do like an in-movie like reference like Scream is a franchise by Wes Craven. It'd be the perfect way to do the whole new movie without Wes Craven.
Yeah, just like we said, do a full-on new Nightmare type of thing with Scream.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. I know nothing about whether, I don't know. I know the movie's called Scream. It's not called Scream 5. I've talked about this on my show, other shows. I get real tired of how every movie nowadays is just called, like, why is there the Suicide Squad and Suicide Squad? Why is there the Exorcist and Exorcist? Why are there going to be two movies called Scream? But yeah, whether it's a reboot or whatever it's called, I don't know much about it. So I'm very interested to see what direction they go.
Well, the thing is that we're not really seeing a whole lot of marketing for this movie, and it's literally supposed to be out this month, right? Or was it supposed to be out in November? I'm not really sure.
I don't know. I don't know at all.
See, exactly. It's like, I mean, what are they doing, really?
It's probably getting delayed to 2022.
It probably is. I'm sure the pandemic had a lot to do with that. It kind of screwed everything over, I'm sure.
I'll look it up right now. You guys keep it going.
For sure.
I already did. Release date, January 14th, 2022.
See, it got delayed.
It got delayed, yeah. Makes sense. That makes a whole lot of sense, actually. And I'm sure that we'll do an At the Movie review whenever that comes out, because that'll be interesting. I mean, maybe they'll do more of a Halloween 2018 kind of thing with it.
I like what they did with Halloween 2018, and that's one of the reasons that's another example of your irritation, Stu. Because this one is even worse because it's also called Halloween, but it's actually the sequel to the first film. So
yeah.
God, the Halloween timelines are all over the place, and yeah, there are now 3 movies just in that franchise that are called Halloween.
Yeah, seriously, it's fucking weird.
Yeah, well, we don't have to really bring up the Rob Zombie one anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we went into all that when we did our Halloween 2018 review a few seasons back.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Robert, who's of course not with us right now, he knows a lot about the Halloween timelines. But let's go ahead and get into some of the characters of this movie. Sydney herself, played by Nev Campbell, I mean, I think that she is a very, very dynamic character, right?
It's interesting that... And this is one of those things I bring up. It seems to have happened a lot in the 90s, but it's weird that she didn't just become the biggest thing on the planet after this. Like, she did the other Scream movies. She did stuff like Wild Things and The Craft, but boy, you watch this movie and you just expect that, like, she was going to be in every movie in the universe after this because she is so good in it.
It's so weird. I know. I mean, I saw an Ask Reddit post that asked something along that same line. Is like, who was an actor that really popped early, but after just didn't really go anywhere after a few movies? And you know what? Neve Campbell didn't even come up once. And that's an interesting thing to point out.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely ones I would think of before her. Trust me, like she's had a better career than some people that you might think of in that regard. But like, she felt like she was borderline A-list after this, and that just never materialized. She just kind of stayed on the B-list tier there.
Yeah, and she was like the biggest thing in the '90s, especially due to Party of Five and everything. And then this role right here came, and it's like, yeah, she got Wild Things and The Craft, but I mean, Jesus Christ, what else did she do?
Yeah, that's sad because she's actually, I think, one of my favorite final girls.
Yeah, she's a great final girl, and it's because she subverts the final girl trope so deeply, you know, and that's pretty much what she's written for. So
yeah, she gets laid and she survives.
Exactly, yeah, and
Yes.
and even the one virgin of the movie survives as well, Jamie Kennedy's character.
Yes.
So both the final girl and the actual virgin survives in the end. And that's, once again, this movie is all about subversion of tropes. And a lot of that goes back to the characters. And, you know, Billy, of course, you know, who ends up being the killer in the end. I think it's really interesting how they did the whole, you know, did he or didn't he thing, even though they eventually made it pretty obvious, I would say. But, you know, they did really kind of play with him a little bit as a character.
Yeah, you watch this movie and there are some scenes, especially with Dewey, that are so weird when you're rewatching this movie where like they're trying to set Dewey up as suspicious just because the movie wants you to think everybody is suspicious, but it's just weird scenes in regard to him. But Billy, I mean, everything they do with him works. Again, my only problem with him, I guess, is of course he's the bad guy. He looks like Skeet Ulrich. Like, if I saw that guy in real life, I'd be like, oh, shit, he's definitely a villain in some regard. He has killed some amount of people.
Yeah, that's another guy who is like, why didn't you have a slightly bigger role? But, of course, he's Skeet Ulrich. Of course, he didn't have much of a career after this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, come on now.
They do make a point of that in the movie, though. You know, Randy points that out at with Billy at one point, you know. Like, he's totally the killer. Look at him.
I mean,
I think it's when they're in the video store together. He says that. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, for fuck's sake. I mean, Jamie Kennedy had a more distinguished career after this. It's like,
what was that, Malibu's Most Wanted?
and the Jamie Kennedy Experiment, which was kind of good. It was kind of a good show. A little annoying, but I mean, it was kind of okay. And Malibu's Most Wanted, I can't take that seriously at all. I can't take that movie seriously, period.
It was what it was. I remember kind of half watching it once, and it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. But I mean, it's not great either. It's exactly what you think that movie's going to be.
Exactly. You know, I mean, it's exactly what you expect Jamie Kennedy to be. It's exactly what he's going to be. But yeah, I mean, Jamie Kennedy's character, he's the one that actually puts forth all the rules of the movie and of horror movies in general.
Yeah,
you know?
Scream doesn't work without that character because you lose 80% of the meta element if you don't have the Randy character. You 100% need him, which is why I think they definitely made sure he survived to at least make it as far as the second. Because again, you need to have this kind of fourth wall breaking character that's walking the audience through like, well, here's what you can expect vis-a-vis what we might actually give you.
Well, he's also the main connection between the actual fandom of horror and this movie as well. He's representative of the fandom. So
yes,
I mean, he goes even beyond the fourth wall for everybody. He's specifically talking to the horror nerds, you know, like me and like all of us. You know, he's speaking to us and he's being like, "See, it's like, look at all the tropes that are being presented here. Now, how are we going to play with them?"
Yeah, he is the audience in 100%. Like you're supposed to, especially if you go in as, you know, somebody who's loved the Halloween and Jason and Freddy movies. He's the character you're supposed to be like, yeah, he knows what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. There's a very, very interesting scene near the end where he's watching, I believe it's Nightmare. I think it's either Nightmare or Halloween. And
Halloween.
It's Halloween. And he's just straight up like look behind you, and then there's the Ghostface killer right behind him coming up. Yes. But then he's the Ghostface killer is distracted by Sydney, who's running away. And everything's running out to the news van.
And then in the news van, they're watching it and they're like, look, turn around.
And of course, there's a 30-second delay there. So
you as the actual audience of the movie are telling those two characters to turn around as they're telling Jamie Kennedy to turn around as he's telling Jamie Lee Curtis to turn around.
It's amazing the levels that this movie works on. It's actually well written that way. And also, Rose McGowan is in this movie. She plays Sydney's friend who, I mean, we had to have a good catty, cynical character who's also kind of breaking the fourth wall by just pointing out how stupid these tropes are.
Hello?
Hello?
Who is this?
If you tell me your name, I'll tell you mine.
I don't think so.
What's that noise?
Popcorn.
You making popcorn?
Well, I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
You never told me your name.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
Someone is playing a deadly game.
It all began with a scream over 911.
Someone who's seen one too many scary movies. Now, he's taken his love of fear.
Hello?
Hello, Sydney.
One step too far.
Do you like scary movies?
What's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a scary movie. Number one, you can never have sex. Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back. Get another beer, you want one? Yeah, sure. I'll be right back.
He didn't make the rules.
The police are always on track. If they watch prom night, they save time.
He just kills by them. Don't answer the phone. Don't open the door. Don't try to hide.
Everybody, the suspect!
You're not scared, are you?
Scream.
Like she that's kind of her role a little bit.
She is, and she is delightfully snarky in this movie. Like, she's the biggest loss in this movie is whenever she dies, because she is so much fun on the way. I thought the
same thing.
Yeah, they should have actually used her character a little more, especially during the party scene.
I thought it was a shame she died so early, yeah.
And it's also kind of interesting how Scary Movie parodied her. They kind of, I guess she was supposed to be Shannon Elizabeth's character in that movie. And it's
that would make sense.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how they played around with her in Scary Movie. It was actually very interesting. And she's doing that whole snarky, like, oh, you're supposed to be the scared little final girl. You're the evil killer. She's doing that the entire time that she's getting chased and killed. and it leads to some hilarious results. But yeah, Rose McGowan's character, I mean, she's very interesting. And of course, I mean, what can we say about, Courtney Cox in this movie? I mean, she was one of the breakout roles next to Neve Campbell here, having had the Friends pedigree.
Has she been in every one so far?
I think so, yeah.
I've only seen 1 and 2, so I don't know if she made it into 3 or 4. I know she was in 3.
Yeah,
I don't know if she was in 4 or not.
Her and Arquette are both in most all of the Screams, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. Courtney Cox, she brings a charm to Gale that's also very, easy to hate. She's a love-to-hate character in many ways. And she has great chemistry with David Arquette in this movie, which makes sense.
Oh, she really does.
Yeah, they started dating after this, and their chemistry is just like on fire, like right away.
Yeah, every time they're on the screen together, you buy all of their dynamic.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. And David Arquette, he plays his character kind of straight. And
I love him.
And he was initially one of the red herrings of the movie, but I mean, that was overtaken rather quickly after a while.
Here's what I get a kick out of as I was looking over the cast for this movie. David Arquette, as far as the characters go, is the oldest of the male characters.
Yeah.
But he is the youngest actor.
That's funny.
He is younger than Lillard, Kennedy, and Ulrich, but he plays a character who's like, what, at least 2 or 3 years older than all
he's
of them.
like 25, I believe. He says straight up he's a 25-year-old.
Which, to be fair, I mean, all of the actors at this time were in their mid to late 20s. I guess this was back in that the day when we still did that.
Yeah.
We weren't casting like 18 or 19-year-olds to be teenagers. We were just like, just get a 30-year-old. It's fine. No one will know.
Nobody will notice.
Everybody in my high school looked like Rose McGowan. Sure. Why not?
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, but of course, I mean, I might as well add that we are talking about WCW World Heavyweight Champion David Arquette while we're at it. Yeah, that happened.
It did, and 100% I've already queued it up on Hulu. Before this weekend ends, since I watched Scream, I'm going to watch, what is it, You Cannot Kill David Arquette?
Yeah, exactly. Check that out. And apparently, he's actually become a legitimate wrestler in recent years, and he's actually getting some indie cred. So, I mean, it's actually interesting to watch him kind of transition into a different career after what was it, Ready to Rumble? That was the name of the movie?
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Oh, man, we're going to have to do that movie, man. We might have to have you on that episode because, yeah, that movie it's just all about marks. It's fucking great.
And it's great because Arquette legitimately is a fan. Like, he was famous because he was an actor, and then he got to do what all of us would want to do, and then we all hated him for it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, shouldn't have the world title, but if any one of us went in WCW in 2000 and they were like, for a rub, we're gonna put the title on you, I'd be like, yeah, okay, sure, do that thing.
Yeah, why wouldn't you want to be WCW World Heavyweight Champion for a while? I mean, especially with the pedigree behind that belt and everything, going all the way back to the NWA and whatnot. So, yeah, I would say yes to that, wouldn't you, Ash? I mean, I know you're not much of a wrestling fan, but...
You said NWA, and I thought, fuck the police and straight out.
Oh, my Lord. It was the Northern Wrestling Alliance, I believe it was called.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, wrong NWA, Ash.
Well, okay.
We're not talking about Dre and Cube and Easy.
Hey, I don't know anything about wrestling.
But, I mean, one more final note on the characters. You also have Henry Winkler in this movie, the Fonz himself.
Oh, yeah.
And he's great in this movie. I mean, he's
great in everything.
Yeah, he's kind of has a little bit of that character that he would eventually play in Arrested Development, I think.
Yes, yeah. He's very, like, a somewhat more serious, not drug-addicted Barry Zuckerkorn.
Yeah,
but he even does kind of the thing where, like, he has the cupboard in his office that has a mirror in it, and he has the scene where he's like, he poofs up his hair in the mirror, and it's like, all right, I see you, movie, what you're doing with Henry Winkler.
Yeah, exactly. You're just kind of having that whole meta Arthur Fonzarelli vanity moment and whatnot.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh, man, and he's charming in this movie as well. And I feel like there's someone else that we're forgetting in this movie. Who else was in this movie that was notable?
I am going to look up his name
Matthew
because
Lillard,
I don't know his
course.
name, but I will tell you who you're forgetting in 1 second. Just keep talking. I will look up the cast list and let you know.
Yeah, of course, Matthew Lillard. What can be said about him? Shaggy himself.
He used exactly 0.0001% of his power in this movie.
Oh, there was no way that Nev Campbell probably would be the only one that can stand up to him, though. Nev Campbell could. Nev Campbell has even more power in the tiny percentile range than Shaggy.
It is an interesting twist at the end because, well, at first they throw you for a loop, and Billy seems like he was actually just a red herring, but he actually is the killer, and it was like, oh yeah, that was kind of obvious the whole time, but but then they blow another twist in, and Matthew Lillard is also a part of it. We've got Billy and Stu are on the whole thing, and you can very clearly see in their interactions in that moment that Stu is the sociopath and Billy is the psychopath.
Yeah, exactly.
In this.
Yeah, it makes sense that Stu would be the follower here and everything.
Yeah.
And I love the excuse that he gives whenever Sydney is asking him on the phone. It's like, what is your excuse? Billy has an excuse. What's your excuse? He's like,
peer pressure. I'm very sensitive. That's possibly the best line of the movie. Even all these years later, I crack up at that line.
And he's sitting there just all wounded and everything and dying, just like peer pressure.
And she says that she called the police, and he's like, my parents are going to be so mad at me.
That is so classic. I love that moment. It's just another one of the examples of that great satirical humor throughout this movie.
That third act in particular is probably just the best part of the movie.
Other than the actual intro at the first act.
The first act and the third act are honestly the best parts. But
oh yeah, a lot of what happens between the Drew Barrymore scene and the third act in the house party is just waiting for the third act in the house party.
Yeah, I always felt
just
like
getting to that point.
I felt like that's really the pacing of the movie. It has a really, really solid first act that sets up everything you need to know about the story, and then the story kind of becomes a little more low-key, and we start to kind of see this little build-up and everything. You have a few more calls, and then you have Henry Winkler's murder and everything. And then eventually you get to the party, and that's where the third act comes in, and that's where the climax is, and that's some of the most iconic parts of the movie.
The acting in that part is actually really brilliant. I love just how wild they get and off the rails and, just everything in the open.
Hell, that's where you have the famous Jamie Kennedy rules of horror speech and everything.
Right.
I will have you know that literally I have the movie on in the background right now, and we are 2 seconds away from Jamie Kennedy jumping up and saying, "These are the rules." Like, that's literally what I'm about to rewatch with the sound off, but there it is. Yeah.
Hell yeah, that's great. That is serendipitous, needless to say. I tried to find this movie physically, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I don't know why.
Yeah, we streamed it on AMC Plus. I mean, I looked it up on the Apple TV app. And
yeah, not recommended.
It'll recommend, wherever has it for free or whatever service it's a part of. And I could buy or rent it if I wanted to. But, one of the options was with like an AMC Plus free trial of like 7 days, which I already canceled. But AMC literally releases the TV version of it with like the TV cuts in it.
Yeah, there's the commercial.
Oh yeah,
the commercial
that's true.
Cuts. It's the commercial cuts. It's like, what the fuck, man? Are you really shitting me here?
So just shell out the money and buy or rent it. You can buy or rent it from Apple, I think, for it's like $4 or $15. Or if you just go to your local video store. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're able to find a physical copy of this, you could probably find it for literally $5. You might even be able to find all 4 movies on one CD for like $5 even.
Yeah, on like a rack at Walmart or something.
Yeah, or a HEB or Target or whatever. You could probably find this movie somewhere. If I would have had the time to look a little deeper, I probably could have found it. But yeah, don't watch it on AMC. You may as well watch it on TV. It's just maybe a little bloodier and with the cursing and everything.
Did they even cut out any cursing or gore in the?
No, they didn't. I mean, I'm just kind of confused what they actually cut through to make the commercial cuts. Like, I mean, I'm not really sure what's missing from there, if anything.
I don't think anything's missing. I think they just have those awkward fades.
It's very awkward, and it really kind of takes you out of the movie. So, yeah, that's just not the way to watch it. You may as well just watch it on TV with the advertisements.
So I looked up on the cast list. I wanted to get the other cast member I definitely wanted to talk about because, like I said, I was pretty much the age target when this movie came out. I was as old as these characters were supposed to be. This came out in 96. I would have been 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
I was a teenager watching this movie. You watched this movie back then. You're empathizing with the Randy character. You like the Nev Campbell character. I'm 40 now. I'm 40. I'll be 41 in less than a month. Jesus Christ. But I'm 40 now, and I watched this movie. You know who I cheered for in this movie? Kenny. Kenny the cameraman, played by W. Earl Brown.
Oh man, he was great. He's just a
now as a 40-year-old man, that is who I cheer for. I cheer for the guy who doesn't really want to do his job. He just wants to eat snacks. He just wants to take a nap if he can squeeze one in.
Yeah, most of the time he's just kind of chillaxing in the news van. That's really just what he does.
He's just annoyed by all these stupid teenagers running around. He doesn't really care about any of their lives. He just wants to eat his Cheez-Its.
Yeah,
that's it. That's my character.
Yeah, very much a relatable character. Just a working stiff, just trying to do his job, and just, it's a boring ass job. You do a lot of stakeouts. You're gonna munch on some snacks.
See, he's getting yelled at. What's essentially his boss, that he's not doing his job fast enough or well enough.
Yeah, they really lean in.
To go into a party.
They really lean into that in Scary Movie. They really play with, Sherry O'Terry plays Gale Weathers, the Gale Weathers character in that. And her interaction with her cameraman is hilarious. Like, he's pretty much just like, man, fuck this chick.
Great. if that's y'all's generation, that means that, or I mean, you're the same generation as me. You're just elder millennial, and I'm like young. But I'm 25, so I'm the same age as Deputy Doofus.
Deputy Doofus, Officer Doofy. Oh man, Officer Doofy was great. That's actually a really great, if somewhat not so politically correct send up, but I remember recently when the pandemic started, he was going around like LA as the Doofy character, like just making sure people were social distancing with this measuring stick with like 6 dildos apart.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, he was like, no, you got to be 6 feet apart. Like doing that whole shtick and everything.
That's awesome. With dildos so people weren't touching them.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was actually an interesting way for him to go out and be Officer Doofy. He also does the character at a lot of conventions, I understand.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I mean, he's really leaned into that quite a bit. It'd be funny to see him and Anna Faris kind of reprise their roles in that. That would be really funny. Like Anna Faris was really great in that movie as well. She played the Neve Campbell character kind of dumb all the way through.
Yeah.
Dumb, but also aware of what movie she's in.
It's a very self-aware movie, and I think that's what I like most about it.
About Scream?
Right.
Yeah, Scream is extremely self-aware in its script and everything. And that third act really undercuts it in so many ways.
Right.
Like it's notable that Matthew Lillard's character is finally offed by a TV that is playing Nightmare on Elm Street, and Neve says, "In your dreams," and then just knocks it over on him and kills him. It's like, yeah, horror fucking killed Stu in the movie. A horror movie killed him. That's something remarkable, right? But anyway, I guess we can go ahead and start getting into our final thoughts on this movie. We'll go ahead and start with you, Stuart. Go ahead.
It holds up really well. I was surprised. You know, we talked about Cabin in the Woods, and you guys talked a lot about Scary Movie, which you've seen. Like, a lot of things have come after this and have taken a little bit of the shine off of it, because boy, it was such an original concept when it came out. And then every movie in the world tried to be it for a solid 10 years after it came out. And then Cabin in the Woods was 15 years later, and was at least as good as Scream, if not better. But when you watch it, it's the shots are really good. The acting is really good. It's still a lot of fun, even though you know what's going on all these years later. You know who the killers are. It's still a really good mystery. Everything has aged pretty darn well on it. I will say there's a few weird moments. Like I noted, there's a few weird shots in particular. Like when Henry Winkler dies, you get the close-up of his eyeball and you see the mask in the eyeball. Or there's a scene where Tatum and Sydney are in a grocery store, and then you see Ghostface in the reflection of like the ice cream glass. Or there's a scene where they're outside and then the camera zooms into the woods and you have this like Sasquatch moment where Ghostface kind of runs like from one side to the other. And all three of those were kind of like, I don't know what you were going for with these shots, Wes Craven.
I want to say those were his attempts at jump scares, maybe. Like the Sasquatch scene is real weird because it zooms off into the woods and Ghostface comes in from one side, looks straight on at the camera, and then runs back off into the woods. And it's literally like all those videos you see supposedly of Sasquatch. And I was like, is this supposed to be a send up of that? I don't know what's happening here. I don't know. It just could have been a send up of certain movie tropes at that time when it came to horror. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, those are very, very weird moments. But yeah, you're right. Other than that, everything really ages rather well. Even with the whole cell phone angle and everything. But
yeah, it's the same thing as like if you watch Halloween right now, they obviously didn't even have the concept of cell phones back then. So it's fine. You accept the movie for the era it was written for.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Ash, what are your final thoughts?
Oh, it's incredibly original. And it's fun, too, because when I think of Wes Craven and I think of, like, Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, that's played a bit more seriously, although not completely. So I like how this is humorous in a very intelligent way. And, you know, it's not just like, what am I trying to say? I mean, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. The humor's very intelligent. You know, the whole meta critique is just a lot of fun, but it's also a well-directed movie.
It really is. I mean, Wes Craven really knew his way around, you know, framing a shot and everything. Like, I mean, you could really tell that in his movie Last House on the Left, even though it was really, really gritty and it was really kind of, you know, downright dirty and exploitative looking. I mean, he still knew how to, you know, set up his foreground, how to set up what's in his background and everything, stuck to the rule of thirds and whatnot. I mean, he really was a very cinematic director when you really get down to it. I mean, and in many ways, I feel he's kind of underrated. You know, maybe somewhat in the same way that a lot of John Carpenter's works can be a little underrated.
Oh, yeah, I think Wes Craven's definitely more underrated than John Carpenter. I think John Carpenter gets a lot of credit for being a very intelligent director. I think people think of Wes Craven as just like, oh, he made slashers, and people don't really respect that. But, I mean, he definitely had a sense of the scope of dread that you needed to add to a scene. There's scenes where he disorients you by kind of like moving the camera around like almost spherically, so you just have this sense of something's wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it because it's just because of the way the camera is moving or aimed. And I mean, that's really good stuff for the kinds of movies that he made because it keeps you off balance.
Exactly. You know, and when it came to, you know, the type of scripts that he worked with, he also made lots of really interesting movies like Deadly Friend, like People Under the Stairs. He made The Serpent in the Rainbow, which is a great supernatural thriller and everything. And
yeah, he
of
made
course,
Red Eye, which is a pretty good thriller. Like, there's no horror aspect to it, but I believe that was him with Cillian Murphy and Rachel McAdams on an airplane.
Yeah.
And what about that? They make that joke too. Remember, it was like they say Wes Carpenter.
Wes Carpenter, exactly. There's that little meta joke right there.
I was trying to remember the exact quote, but anyway, they dropped the name Wes Carpenter.
I mean, and Wes Craven even did one of the penultimate Siege movies, Hills Have Eyes, you know, which was redone by Alexander Aja back in the 2000s. That's another great movie. I don't know if either of y'all has seen Hills Have Eyes.
I don't know that I've seen the original. I didn't care for the remake. I know that. That was a bit too torture porn for me. Like when I was talking earlier about how this movie is brutal and bloody but not gory.
Yeah.
The Hills Have Eyes was a bit too gory for me. It was the kind of stuff that was just like, you know, made my stomach queasy to watch.
Well, the thing is, the actual original Hills Have Eyes is kind of a down and dirty, disturbing movie in its own right.
Yeah,
so it's really,
that's what I've heard.
It's really not that far removed from what Alexander Aja did with the source material. I feel that I really like Alexander Aja as a director. I mean, I have High Tension. I don't care for the ending, but I think that it's a very serviceable slasher movie. And he did the source material some justice, if I thought the story kind of fell flat a little bit near the end in the third act. But I mean, I guess that's your final thoughts on everything, Ash?
The only other thing I want to say is that it pains me to know that Harvey Weinstein's paws are all over this.
Oh, I know.
His prints are just, especially some of those shots, you know, with characters that are, well, actors portraying underage characters that are just a little sensualized. Just knowing that Harvey Weinstein's name is attached to that just gives me kind of creepy vibes in retrospect.
Ugh. Yeah. Try watching The Burning nowadays.
He's one of those guys that you just kind of have to, as much as you can, you kind of have to separate him from the art because him and his brother were involved in what, like every third movie that came out for like 20 or 30 years.
Yeah,
like almost anything you watch is going to have his name on it.
Including like Oscar award-winning movies.
Yeah, so to be fair, I guess his money was just kind of thrown at it, so that's not too big of a deal.
Yeah, but if you really want to see something that will make you want to take a shower, watch The Burning. He actually wrote the script for that movie.
Oh, no.
I'm not down with anything he wrote, no.
No, it's like, and The Burning is considered a classic slasher movie. I mean, it had Tom Savini as a special effects director on that, and that was right after he initially did Friday the 13th, so...
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people say that Friday the 13th was derivative of The Burning, but it's actually the other way around. But yeah, that's what's up with that fucking movie. But I think that Scream is, you know, it's very much of its time, but it's also like beyond its time as well, if you know what I mean. The meta angle is something that would become almost standard in a lot of horror movies coming from that time. And like y'all said, it wasn't really perfected until Cabin in the Woods came out. Although I, of course, say that, you know, Funny Games was actually kind of down that same path a little bit. I mean, and in Funny Games, the characters literally break the fourth wall and talk to you. They're just like, yeah, you like this, don't you?
Yeah, they rewind the movie when things go wrong. The movie lost me a little bit on that point. That was too much breaking of the fourth wall. But I would say the difference is, like, Funny Games is pretty much 100% a horror thriller. Scream is like 75% horror to 25% comedy. And then you have Cabin in the Woods, which is like the perfect 50-50 like comedy horror split. Like they combined both elements as perfectly as you're going to get there.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I just kind of feel like Funny Games is a good movie to kind of bring up in the same light. I mean,
absolutely. It's definitely thematic.
Thematically, it's very much satirical in the same way. But, I mean, I really like the characters. I like the cast in this movie. I mean, Neve Campbell is such a sweetheart. I mean, like you said, Skeet Ulrich was perfect to play the boyfriend and then eventually the killer. You know, of course, there was, good old Matt Lillard, of course. The legend
Matthew
himself.
Lillard, man, he is just reaching for the brass ring in every scene he is in this movie, man.
Exactly.
He is not leaving anything behind. They said action, and he was like, I will give you all the action.
He chewed scenery left and right.
Yes.
Every scene he was.
He's good at that, actually. He's really good at just completely throwing himself into a role. I'd love to see method acting if he hasn't done that.
You should see his movie SLC Punk. That's like his one of his masterworks, pretty much.
I remember seeing that like back in Hollywood Video back in the day all the time. I just never got around to renting it.
I highly recommend watching it. It's one of his best works, and it's a very funny yet powerful comedy drama. Has a very much a gut punch ending, but it's also all about the punk scene in Salt Lake City in the fucking late 80s, early 90s and whatnot. So,
Cabin in the Woods also has a stoner character who I thought could be an excellent Shaggy.
Yeah, right.
It kind of works, right?
Yeah, it does.
Maybe that character is just kind of necessary.
Maybe he is.
To the thing.
But yeah, Scream is definitely one of the preeminent slasher satires of all time. It's always fun to watch. I mean, I could sit down and watch it pretty much any time, and it's a fucking 2-hour long movie, and it flows so perfectly. I mean, you could get from point A to point B easily. So, I mean, it's just something that you should own even. Get a physical copy of this. It's definitely an important movie.
Yeah, it definitely earns its status. It was pretty much an instant classic when it came out, if I recall correctly, and it holds up. It's earned that.
Yeah, it's more than earned its role as among the all-time iconic horror movies. And also Ghostface, he's become iconic in his own right since then as well. I mean, another great thing about him is his simplicity. He literally just bought a fucking Halloween costume from Spirit of Halloween and went on a slasher killing spree. It's very simple. It like you said earlier, anyone could really do what these two did, and anyone could probably take them out easily if you outsmart them.
And I like that in the reality of the movie, I think it's the principal or maybe one of the police says something like, they have a billion of these costumes all over the state.
Yeah, it's like there's no way to really like determine who is who here. Yeah, there's no way to narrow it down. But anyway, that is our episode on Scream. I think that we had a lot of fun here. Isn't that right, guys?
Yeah, it was great. I had a really good time with you guys.
It was a pleasure having you on the show. We're going to go ahead and let you plug whatever you have coming up here right now. So go ahead, man.
Sure, absolutely. So my podcast is The Stu World Order. We do random comic book movies, which you guys are going to be on. We're going to do a recording of a movie soon. And the way we do that is I have a big comprehensive list. I have my guests draw 3 random movies. I tell them what they chose, and they pick the one we're going to watch. And that's every episode. Sometimes we get good movies. We've done stuff like Avengers Endgame. Sometimes we do Catwoman. So what are you going to do? It's all down to what people draw. But I also have the website, SWOproductions.com. We have pop culture articles every single day, and you can find us on Twitter at SWO Productions.
Yeah, we follow you on Twitter, and you have a pretty prolific Twitter page. So yeah, go follow him there. Ash, what's going on with Collateral Gaming?
Collateral Gaming, we are wrapping up our season finale. Should have had it out already, but part 1 is out already on Beyond Two Souls. Part 2 has already been recorded. I just got to edit it down, and that's going to be on Heavy Rain. So we're kind of comparing and contrasting those 2 Quantic Dream titles. And then very soon here, probably within a week or so, we're going to be releasing our season premiere of Collateral Gaming Season 4. We are talking about Metroid Dread. So we're going to open up with a spoiler-free review, and then we are going to do our Halloween special on Outlast, and then finish up, and part 2 of Metroid Dread will actually be a full spoiler
episode.
Right.
Excellent.
So, and that kind of gives it a month after the game has come out, and we can really, dive into some stuff because it's Metroid and we can't not do that along with, every Zelda game that comes out.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
So that's really exciting. And Collateral Cinema.
And Collateral Cinema, and the next episodes that we are going to be doing is going to be a two-parter next month during November. We're getting into the Star Wars prequels.
Hell yeah.
The prequels.
The prequels, yeah. This was Ash's idea. I'll have you know.
This is after our Halloween special, though, right?
Yeah, our Halloween special is going to be on Halloween Kills whenever it's released. We're going to at least try to have it ready before or on Halloween. We're really excited about that. It was originally delayed last year. We were going to do it last year, but we just couldn't. So
October is a total horror month. We did Necromantic, we're doing Scream, and we're doing our At the Movies edition episode on Halloween Kills. Another spoiler-free review that we're going to have a lot of fun doing.
Yeah, and we are also on the Victims and Villains Horrific Hope Awareness-a-thon. And we're going to go ahead and announce it. We're going to do Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. We're going to celebrate everything Elvira because she's been in the news a lot lately for various reasons. She's had a few specials on Netflix and on Shudder.
Fuck yeah, she looks great. And she's what, like
she's 70? She just turned 70.
That's insane. Yep. I can't believe it.
She looks amazing.
I mean, I would smash.
And I just want to back up on you guys and say that Victims and Villains, great podcast. I've done stuff with them in the past. What they do, what they seek to raise awareness for is great stuff. They're just a fantastic show, and I definitely look forward to hearing you guys with them. Those are two fantastic shows for the price of one, if I may say so.
Oh, definitely, man. And we're always excited to work with them. I mean, and also for a good cause. I mean, we've done this already like twice in the last year and a half or so.
Do we have anything planned with Captain Nostalgia? Oh yeah, our Christmas special.
Yeah, we're going to have our Christmas special. We're going to be doing Last Ounce of Courage.
Yeah, so
nice.
Yeah.
War on Christmas movie. Yeah, let's do this.
So yeah, we frequently work with Victims and Villains. Awesome podcast. Again, everything that Stu just said, they're great, and what they're doing is great.
And on the prequel episodes, it's going to be a two-parter, two separate episodes. We're going to have the Spy Hearts podcast with us on that one.
Okay, good.
So yeah, they're going to be with us.
Look forward to that too.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple of episodes. I mean, I'm actually interested in how you're going to structure these episodes. So
yeah, I think we're going to kind of do like episodes 1 and part of 2, and then episodes 2 and 3.
Oh, okay, I see. Well, all right, we'll get there when we get there, I guess.
Something like that. We'll figure it out. I don't want to do 3 separate episodes, but I think we need more than one.
Yeah.
To get into all 3. But yeah, I'm really excited about Collateral Cinema Season 5. Just getting started. We still have a lot more content ready for you guys, both on this side and the director's cut. We're going to be releasing more commentaries on our Patreon. If you haven't checked out our Patreon, feel free to subscribe. We have $1 and $5 tiers, and you'll get access to our exclusive full-length movie commentaries.
Exactly. And hopefully very soon, maybe we might even do our own little exclusive live stream if we have a few people. And we do have at least one $1 patron. It's Vern from the Cinema Recall. Thank you, Vern. We appreciate the $1.
Yeah.
We appreciate it, man. Thank you.
You'll get a shout out.
Yeah, you got your shout out now, brother. All right. But you can also find Collateral Cinema on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Find us on Podbean, on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast. You can find us on iHeartRadio, and you can find us wherever else you get your podcast. Also, look for us on Chill Lover Radio. And also, what else are we on? We're on Good Pods as well. Check us out on Good Pods. Give us some listens and help us get up on that leaderboard. I mean, I've been hearing a lot of good things about a lot of the podcasts getting high up on the leaderboard there. So, yeah, help us get up there. And, I think that we're deserving of being at least the top 100. I think we're deserving of it. Are you on Good?
Definitely.
Are you on Good Pods, too?
I believe so, yeah. I believe I have the app. I've claimed the podcast on there. All right. I believe so, yes.
Right on. Okay, so yeah, look for Stu on Good Pods as well. But I guess that with all of that, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you very much once again for being on the podcast, Stu. We will definitely have you on again in the near future, maybe even on some director's cut episodes here or there.
Oh, fantastic. That would be great. It'll be, we've talked about Scream, and we previously talked about Spider-Man 3, which is no worse than the second best movie in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. I will throw that out there.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. Yeah, check out our episode on that. We had a lot of fun with that. But with that said, I'm Bo Maddox.
And I'm Ashley Chancellor.
And I'm Robert Stewart.
And this was Collateral Cinema. Thank you once again, Stu, and we'll see you next episode. Laters. Collateral Cinema is a Collateral Media podcast. All music and movie clips are owned by their respective creators and are used for educational purposes only. Please don't sue us. We're poor.